Althea had always believed that her voice was the only treasure she possessed. Every evening in Manila, as the sun dipped behind the crowded buildings and the streets came alive with vendors and jeepneys, she would take her place on the same worn-out corner. She was a small girl with big eyes, barefoot on the warm pavement, holding a plastic cup that rattled with a few coins. Her voice floated over the noise of traffic, drawing brief glances from people rushing home from work. Most didn't stop, but every now and then someone would pause long enough to hear her soft, aching melody and drop a peso or two into her cup. That small sound of metal hitting plastic was the sound of dinner for her family. One night, while she sang her gentle version of Hawak Kame, a tourist noticed her and pulled out his phone, recording the moment without her even realizing. Her voice trembled with sincerity, and the emotion in her face was impossible to ignore. The video was uploaded online, and in just a few days, people from different countries were sharing it, calling her the Little Angel of Manila. A producer from America's Got Talent saw it and contacted local volunteers who worked in the same area. They searched for her for days until they finally found the shy 9-year-old singing beside a convenience store. When they approached her and mentioned AGT, she froze, confused. She had never imagined being seen by someone like Simon Cowell, let alone being invited to audition. Her mother, tired from long working hours, didn't know whether to believe the producers. But when they showed the official invitation with her name printed clearly, the woman broke down crying. Althea didn't understand why strangers would help her, but she felt something warm inside her chest, something that felt like hope. Donations from supporters covered her travel. The journey to Los Angeles was overwhelming. The airplane, the food she had never tasted before, the kindness from people she had never met. She looked out the window during the flight, watching clouds drift like cotton, wondering how a life like hers could change this fast. When she finally arrived at the AGT venue for rehearsal, she felt incredibly small in front of the towering stage lights and thousands of empty seats. She clutched her hands together, wishing she were back home where the only audience was the street. But the moment she stepped onto the stage for the actual audition, everything changed. The judges looked at her with curiosity. Simon leaned forward with a serious expression that made her heartbeat tremble. She introduced herself softly, her voice almost disappearing into the microphone as she explained she sang on the streets to help her family buy food. The entire room fell silent. When the music began, she closed her eyes and let everything she had ever felt pour out of her. The fear of hunger, the nights she wished life were different, the dreams she never said out loud, all of it became sound. The audience listened, stunned by the purity of her tone. Her voice cracked once, but instead of weakness, it felt like truth. People in the crowd wiped their tears, and even Simon's expression softened as he blinked hard. When she finished, the crowd rose to its feet in a thunderous standing ovation. The judges praised her, but it was Simon's voice that stayed with her when he called her performance one of the most heartbreaking yet beautiful moments he had ever witnessed. Before she could even process what was happening, the golden buzzer was slammed. Golden confetti rained down on her tiny frame as she covered her face with shaking hands, realizing her life had just stepped into a completely new world she never even knew existed. After receiving the golden buzzer, Althea found herself living a life she had only seen in TV screens displayed outside electronics shops in Manila. The hotel felt enormous, the hallways endless, and the meals were like little miracles placed in front of her. She would stare at simple things like cereal dispensers or warm towels, not quite sure how she was supposed to use them. Other contestants treated her like a little sister, guiding her through everything, cheering her on when she felt overwhelmed. But even in moments of comfort, her heart tugged at her every night when she called home. Her siblings would tell her how proud they were, but she could hear the background noises of their small home, feel the hunger she had once shared with them, and she worried that if she failed, everything she dreamed for them would slip away. Rehearsals for the live show pushed her to emotional limits she didn't know she had. The custom song AGT provided was written around the story of her life, lyrics that spoke of empty plates, street corners, and a voice that refused to break no matter how hard the world tried to silence it. During one rehearsal, she couldn't get through the first verse without crying. She felt exposed, like her entire heart was on display, and part of her wanted to run off the stage. That was when Simon Cowell himself visited her backstage. He knelt down beside her and spoke in a calm, gentle tone she never expected from someone she had only seen being tough on TV. He told her she didn't have to be perfect, she just had to be honest. Use your pain as your power, he said, tapping his hand lightly over his heart. His words settled inside her like a warm light. The night of the live show, the stage felt bigger than ever. The crowd was louder, the cameras brighter, the pressure heavier. But the moment the music started, Althea stepped into her story like she had been preparing her whole life. Her voice carried through the theater with a strength that shocked even her. Every line sounded like a memory, every note like a prayer. Viewers across the world felt the truth in her tone. When she reached the final chorus, thousands of people in the audience stood up at once. The internet exploded afterward, calling her the Angel of Manila, praising how someone so young could carry so much emotion. For the first time in her life, she realized her voice had the power to move not just a street corner, but the world. But the journey only got harder as she moved into the semifinals. Expectations rose. Cameras followed her everywhere, reporters asked her questions she didn't always understand, and she barely had time to sleep between rehearsals, interviews, fittings, and vocal training. The attention was exciting but exhausting for someone who had barely left her home city before this. One afternoon, during a practice session, she stopped singing mid-line and burst into tears. She worried she wasn't strong enough to handle this new world. A vocal coach pulled her aside, letting her cry without judgment, reminding her that every person on that stage had moments of doubt. Althea wasn't alone. AGT producers, sensing her exhaustion, surprised her with a video message from her siblings back in Manila. They stood in their small living room, smiling brightly, telling her that she didn't need to win to make them proud, they already were. Hearing their voices broke something open in her, replacing her fear with fire. On the night of the semifinals, she walked onto the stage with a clearer mind. She performed a raw, slowed-down version of Fight Song, turning the anthem into something soft, aching, and deeply personal. Her voice rose like a whisper fighting through darkness. The audience stood before the final note even ended. Simon told her she was a once-in-a-generation emotional storyteller, and the judges sent her to the finals. At that moment, the little girl who once sang for coins on a Manila street realized she belonged on the world's biggest stage. Finals week arrived with a pressure unlike anything Althea had ever experienced. The rehearsals were longer, the expectations higher, and the atmosphere around the AGT studio felt electric, like everyone knew history was about to be made. Stylists fitted her with a custom gown designed just for her, soft cream fabric with delicate gold accents that shimmered under the lights. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like a princess from a world she never thought she belonged to, yet inside she still felt like the little barefoot girl singing on the sidewalks of Manila. As she prepared for her final performance, she taped a small photo of her family inside her dressing room mirror. She whispered a short prayer for strength, imagining her siblings back home watching her on a small television, waiting to see what she would do. The orchestra was massive, the choir powerful, and the stage was filled with fog that drifted like morning mist across her feet. When the music for Rise Up began, the studio grew silent. Althea took a breath and let her voice climb out of her heart, each note trembling with the weight of her life story. The lyrics felt like they were made for her. Every rise, every fall, every fight, she had lived it. Her voice filled the theater with a mix of innocence and strength that seemed impossible for someone so young. Halfway through the performance, she saw people in the audience wiping their eyes. Even the judges looked shaken. Simon leaned back in his chair, stunned, his usually stern expression softened into something that almost looked like disbelief. When she reached the final high note, her voice cracked, just slightly, just enough to show her humanity, and that moment broke everyone open. As the song ended, the arena erupted in cheers that thundered through her chest. She covered her mouth, overwhelmed, as the entire audience rose to their feet. Simon stood and said, in a voice filled with emotion, that she didn't just perform the song, she lived it, breathed it, and turned it into something unforgettable. Online, the world responded instantly. Millions of viewers replayed her performance, calling her a miracle voice, the pride of the Philippines, and the most emotional singer to ever step on the AGT stage. For the first time, she felt like she wasn't just competing, she was inspiring. On the night of the grand finale results, the mood backstage was tense. Contestants paced around nervously, lights flashed, and the sound of cheering fans filtered through the walls. Althea sat quietly with her mother, holding her hand, trying to steady her breathing. She wore a simple dress for the results show, something that made her feel like herself again. When she walked onto the stage and joined the final two contestants, the crowd erupted into chants of her name. The host read the results with dramatic pauses that stretched each second like an hour. Her heart pounded so loudly she could barely hear anything else. Simon gave her a small nod, as if telling her she had already won in his eyes. And then the announcement came, her name, echoing across the arena. Althea froze as the realization hit her. She had won America's Got Talent. The stage exploded with confetti as she burst into tears. Her mother ran to her, wrapping her in an embrace that shook with joy and disbelief. The judges stood, applauding her, and Simon stepped forward to tell her she represented what hope truly looks like. Cameras flashed as fans cheered, and Althea felt her world shift beneath her feet. After the show, messages and donations poured in. An organization helped her family move into a safe home, and opportunities opened that she never imagined. People in Manila celebrated her victory like she was their own daughter. She went from singing for survival on the streets to becoming a global symbol of resilience, proving to the world, and to herself, that even the smallest voice can rise above everything when given a chance to be heard.